I'm just following these questions that we got from the Cumberland County Society. So they start out with, please tell me your full name.
George Robert Sharp.
And George, were you named after anyone?
Yeah, after my grandfather.
Your two grandfathers.
Two
Two grandfathers.
Because your mother was Robert, your mother's father was Robert Adams.
Okay, so you got both names in once. When and where were you born?
I was born in this house. July the 8th, 1926.
Okay. Can you tell us a little about tell us a little bit about the house, this house that you grew up in? It was a family homestead, I'm thinking.
Yes, it's old, and it takes a lot of oil to keep it warm now. Over up to $5,000 this winter since October.
Ooh.
And but I tell people I sleep just as good here as they do in their new ones.
Well, I bet you do.
But it's coming down that we got to do something pretty soon. Two old age pensioners with 2 cars and a big heating bill.
Well, how old is this house, George? Do you have an idea of when it was built? And who built it? Was it your family that built this house?
Yeah.
His family has lived in it since 1810. He
1810.
got that from when we had our reunion here the other year.
Okay, 1810. Would the house have been built in 1810, or was there another older house and then they built this one, or do you know?
Oh, it was built before that.
No, it wasn't. They built a small house, and when they had 9 children, and there wasn't room for them all, then they built this house. And we figure, how long does it take to have 9 children from 1810? Well, probably 1835 or 40.
Yeah, probably around that. Yeah.
But my grandfather tore off the old kitchen off. It was out here.
Okay.
Had this one put on.
That was in 1895.
90 or 95.
1895. So we found out from the old records,
Yeah,
old
okay.
county records.
Yeah.
George, can you tell us how this community of Millstream, how's it changed since you were a boy?
Well, I think the closeness of neighbors has changed. We were always visiting back and forth, and calling on people at night, but now it's television and radio and stuff. They don't do that.
Not as much visiting as there used to be.
No, and you have neighbors they're good neighbors, first-rate people that do anything for you, but it's different. Yeah.
Technology's changed things.
I think so. Yeah, and people go farther. No,
Yeah.
everything's Sussex here.
Well, when you were young, was there a store in Millstream that you?
Oh yes, yeah, over at the corner there.
Okay. So you wouldn't have gone to Sussex for things on a weekly basis. You could
No,
just run down to the store.
down the store.
Who had the store? Who was an owner when you were young?
Well, John Macaulay, when I was first could remember,
Yeah.
he was a smart man, ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And
He had a mill.
he had a mill in the corner there, but lightning struck it in
21.
1921, burned her all up.
Was there just the one store, or was there
Yeah.
just the one store?
Well, yeah.
What about, there was a school? Where
Yeah,
was
school.
Right straight across here.
Okay.
Yeah. But John Macaulay was a go-getter. He was a great man. I just remember him. I don't know. He must have died in 32.
1932.
32 he died. I remember being sent over there as a kid to get something at the store. And he had fallen down the cement steps
No?
at the tobacco store. And his nose was all skinned up here where he'd hit that. And he was still bleeding then, something. I thought that was quite a thing, you know, kids see that.
But he had a mill there and a cheese factory. And
Yeah.
a shoe repair shop. And wasn't there a shingle mill?
Well, I suppose. I
All
don't
there
know.
in relation to the mill, you know,
Yeah.
the big mill.
And that was right at the corner, right?
Right
It's
near
a
the
nursing
bridge.
home. It's a nursing home now.
Oh,
his
okay.
house,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he built that house, that's the second house.
after the fire.
But that was,
What was your earliest childhood memory? Do you have something that goes way back, earliest thing you can think of?
yeah. I wanted to be big enough to sit on a kitchen chair and my feet touch the floor. I can remember that well.
Well, this memory you just told about going to Sussex with your father would have been there. One of your earliest ones, wasn't
Yeah,
Yeah, just to repeat that. We didn't have the camera on, and you went with your father.
went with my father to Sussex, horse and carriage.
It was a rubber-tired carriage,
Yeah.
you're saying.
It's smooth off. My dad was quite a horseman. He liked a nice team
Yeah.
and kept them good.
So they had a team on this. It wasn't a single horse. It was
No,
two horses.
no, just one.
Oh, it was one. It's just a
one
single horse.
on this single horse carriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long would it take you to go from here to Sussex in those days?
Well, it didn't seem like very long because
No.
there was so much to see. For
Yeah.
me, I would have gone farther likely. Yeah, I don't know what it would take. But,
How old were you on that trip?
well, my dad died when I was 6,
7.
7, yeah.
Mm.
And
It's even less than 7 then.
it was before that,
Okay.
yeah. And I can remember our first day of school, I come home. We always get out early. And I can remember him coming up the driveway with the team, or coming down the driveway, and I can remember him smiling at me.
Hmm.
And just thinking to himself, I suppose, there you got one day in, half day, and you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Huh.
But I don't remember a lot of things about my father.
One thing he remembers is that father was laid out here when he was dead. His body was laid out in the living room, and they had pink lights on each side of the end of the
Yeah.
Okay.
casket, and
Yeah.
pink lights make him sick to this day.
And the smell of flowers.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Your father died when you were 7, and just had failing health, or what happened?
Well, he this is my mother's story. She remarked how he didn't look good all that summer.
Hmm.
His brother came to visit, came home here, and he lived in Illinois. He had a good job with the Goodyear tires,
Okay.
and Dad went back with him as far as Montreal when he was going to leave. And Mama always kind of had it in her head that maybe he saw a doctor there. But he come home and killed a cow for fox meat. He had a lot of foxes.
Yeah.
And that fall, he had 40 females. Well, had an acre fenced off out there. Made a little money at it, but spent it all fixing up. And you know, and he killed a cow that afternoon after he come home. He used to buy old canner cows for fox meat, and he went to bed and never got up.
Hmm.
Died.
The doctor called it
Ptomaine poison.
Ptomaine poisoning. Yeah.
Okay.
His throat swelled up. Maybe it was cancer. How do we know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would have been difficult for your mother to continue with the farm, but she obviously did.
Well, my grandfather was here.
He was 72
Oh,
at that time.
He was 70.
Okay, yeah.
And he was a great man. Yeah. He never looked back. He always looked ahead.
Yeah. So he went ahead and
Yeah. He was like a father to me.
Yeah.
You know.
So-
And he trusted me, and a great lad.
So George, when you were what age did you take over the responsibility of the farm?
Well,
7.5.
7.5.
I always felt responsible,
Yeah.
and I liked it. But even in school, I was more interested in what was going on home than I was at school. And I quoted a saying that farmers are born. You can't make them.
Yeah.
You can send them to agriculture college and get all the learning they want. I don't think they're the grassroots.
He went to school till he started at grade 11. And then their hired band quit, and his grandfather said, if you want this place, I guess you better still look after it.
Yeah, okay.
Because about a couple of years ago, Lee's little girl came over to me one day very earnestly. She said, Gram, did you know that Grampy was a high school dropout? I tried to explain to her, I said the war was on, and when all your buddies had just been going to war the year before, and going to be called up next year, finishing high school, it doesn't seem that important.
No.
No.
And that was a good education in those days.
Oh yeah, lots of
Yeah.
fellows.
Didn't only get to grade 8.
Yeah, fellows here couldn't read and write
Yeah.
just because they didn't go to school. They could get a job farming.
But George had 2 older sisters and 1 little brother that was only a year and a half when their father died. But their mother went on with the Foxes, and that's how she kept it going all the time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe, George, you should tell people about the Foxes, because a lot of people wouldn't be familiar with that.
Well, foxes were pricey, and when they first started.
We have a book in there that showed, because he got different members of his family to each buy a pair, didn't he? They were like $500 a pair.
Yeah,
He
something.
got a book there with some figures like that.
They were pretty pricey.
They were expensive for that time.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and I remember one in the summer one of the old dogs died, and the old fox in the summertime, he's pretty raunchy and the old hair falling out of him, and they skinned him and got $80 for that pelt.
Oh,
They thought that was great. But foxes are back now.
yeah.
The neighbor, the Raymond boy out here, Kevin Raymond,
That's right.
out here in Philippe. He never told me exactly what he took in, but he said they're good.
So they're back.
Yeah.
These were the silver foxes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, silver foxes.
He had 500 this last fall. Yeah, belt.
That's
He
quite
was good.
Yeah, quite a few.
They tried to organize how they had to build the pens and how they tended the foxes, because it'd be interesting to people that never heard.
Yeah, they were in rows, were they?
Yeah, keep them in rows. And you had to put them in the shed through the summer, what they call the pelting shed.
Yeah.
So they would, the fur would come to
Taken up in the
be
fall.
good,
Yeah.
taken up and be good, yeah.
But each female fox had her own house. They just one fox to a pen.
And they were kind of a iffy thing to feed because people were scared of losing them, you know.
Yeah.
You didn't go looking at your little ones for, I don't know, a week or 2 after
Okay.
they had their pops because it would bother them. But my mother was good at it. She'd look in the next morning and see what she had.
They didn't mind her.
No.
Yeah.
But my father was quite particular with them when they first started, you know. Each fox had his pan, but they'd only sit in one pan, eat out of the other,
Yeah.
and rob one another. But Mum would throw them their meat. And she did all right at it too.
So
Till the prices went down. You know, good when and our old pens got rotten
Yeah.
and fall in, and I never liked them really.
No?
I wasn't a fox fella.
Wasn't your...
No.
So, but they did help your mother keep the farm going.
Oh yeah,
They were a good
yeah.
source of
yeah.
income.
Yeah, well, he did. Yeah, because Dad didn't. He had an insurance policy, I guess. There was nothing laid by for the rainy day.
So your grandfather helped out a lot, and your mother was very active on the farm, so that
Yeah. Oh
kept
yeah.
it going.
Yeah. They got along good. This house was divided.
had like for 2 families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was our kitchen in there,
Okay.
and we had access. Yeah. Oh, he had a good life.
Well, when you took over, George, what did you farm? Were you milking cows when you started yourself?
Yeah. The old Grandpa always kept cows.
Yeah.
Sold cream.
So you sold cream, and
then
what
I got to start with shipping milk with Millstream Creamery over here.
Okay.
Arthur, in wartime, Arthur McVeigh ran the creamery then. And he got a job putting pasteurized milk into Camp Sussex.
Okay.
And I got on shipping milk there. And
so you this farm shipped milk ever since?
They were at St. John, shipping to St. John there when my dad died, but it kind of got too much for Grandpa getting it down there in the winter time.
Okay.
And he quit it. He just took our cream.
To the Millstream Creamery?
Creamery. But we did go on the milk when that thing arrived, that you could. It was pretty good, yeah.
So other things, you had the dairy farm, and were there other crops or other things that you raised?
Just fed our cows.
Fed your cows, and that's...
Oh, we had, I think, 30 head here, young cattle and all. And there was always a good sale for a good new milk's cows.
Yeah.
The Long boys at Hampton were great cowmen and milkmen, and they never raised any calves. They just bought cows and milked them till they wouldn't milk a lot more, and then they
buy another one.
Sell them to Dan down there. What Dan was it that was a great butcher?
There was.
Yeah, and he'd buy their fat cows, because a cow would fatten pretty good when late in her lactation when she went to milk.
Yeah.
And the Long boys, Bill Long, the George Long's father.
Okay.
What was his name? No, there was a Will. His name was George. Yeah. And he was a good fellow to buy cows, because he would never say that last cow I got was no good. You'd ask him how that cow turned out. She was a dandy.
Always good.
Yeah. And he'd give you whatever you asked. It was in reason. Yeah. Dandy. Market.
Another question they mentioned here is about Christmas time.
Yeah.
What was that like when you were a young
Well, it was always good. And I often think of my mother, that first Christmas. I think it must have been lonesome for her, because I could hear her rummaging around the house to get some gifts for us kids that she'd had packed in some of the places upstairs, or closets and stuff. And I often thought after, she must have been pretty lonesome.
She never showed it or anything?
No.
Yeah.
No. But the Christmas was, they didn't spend the money on it that they do now, but it was always good. Yeah, because everybody was
The same.
the same.
Yeah.
Nobody splurged too much, because they couldn't afford it. There wasn't the money to do it with.
Another question I have here, George. Was there any time that you might have been mentioned in a newspaper for a special occasion?
No, not very notorious. I never kept out of trouble.
Well,
I learned that from my grandfather. Yeah.
The oldest relative you remember as a child, that would be your grandfather.
Yeah. He was 72 when my dad died. You know, a lot of people would have thrown in the towel then, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But
so he went for another 10 years working on the farm, did he? Till he was
yeah,
about 80,
he worked up until the winter he died. Pretty near, he was always around. But he was a great man. And my mother was going to. She had a sister that was widowed and had 3 family, up in Newcastle, where they came from, Strathaddam. And she was going to go up. Mother had a superior school teacher's license,
Okay.
and she was going to, because my dad did have no claim on the farm, he was just the boy that stayed home,
Yeah.
was going to inherit it. But Grandpa said to her, she was going to go up there, and her sister was going to look after all these kids,
She'd
the four
teach.
of us, and she'd teach,
Hmm.
which was a pretty good plan, likely. But Grandpa didn't want that, because what would he do, he said.
Yeah.
And he said, why don't we stick around, and see if these boys are going to be any good. And so that's what they did.
So,
Made a living. And
one of them turned out to be a farmer.
yeah.
And John's mother was dead at 56. I think she was a widow at 39, but 56 she died of cancer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she didn't have long to enjoy.
No. Well, she worked hard, but
Freer.
she was a smart woman.
Yeah, it would have been difficult for her in those days to
Yeah.
raise a family.
Yeah.
What do you know anything about the origin of your family surname, the name Sharp? Where the Sharps came from, or any history about
Well,
that?
the first Sharps came as loyalists,
Right.
and first Robert Sharp came over here where the Maritime Saw did,
Okay.
and he had 6 sons, and that's the nucleus of all the Sharps that you know and I know around this area.
From Kings County and maybe a little
But
farther.
not, you have to go back 2 generations ahead of that for the Midland Sharps.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were descended from another
yeah, they were different.
generation or 2 back.
Yeah, all connected
But they're all
way
back,
back,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
not as closely as these 6
But where
Sharps.
were they supposed to have come from? Holland, wasn't it?
yeah, I guess so.
We have some of the Midland Sharps did put out a book, and the Sharps go back in that their origins.
Asking the question.
Well, all the stories that I got from my grandfather. He was a great fellow. He liked me, and he trusted me.
Yeah.
And when I'd be going out at night, he had out in the kitchen there. He had a ashtray, picture of a tire that Murray sent his son brought.
Okay.
Goodyear tire with glassed inside. That was, he always left some money in that. And he said, you got enough money, he'd say, when he was going out, there's some up there in that wheel. Yeah. And he was a great man. Had a lot of friends. And had a hard scrabble himself. Yeah, his father died when he was 2 years old
Oh, okay.
with smallpox.
Hmm.
And Grandpa had it, but it didn't kill him. He had pockmarks on his face.
Okay.
And his sister had it too.
So he had to go through. He knew
Oh,
you were going to go through
Well, he,
to a degree.
Yeah. He knew what hard times was. They got a mortgage on the place here, $800. And I got the book of what they got for stuff. And at the sale, he had knocked and sale. I think I forget how much. It's up there and some stuff I got. And he got his father had another 200-acre lot in back of ours. And this John McCauley
Yes.
bought it from him.
Okay.
Bought it for $400. And Grandpa sold it. And he got to thinking that it cut the mortgage in 2, you see.
Right.
And he'd get started. He had a horror of owing anybody money.
That's not a bad
You know,
attribute.
He always said to me, he said, keep some money in your ass pocket. You might lose a horse in haying time,
Yep.
and you can go buy one. And he always quoting that.
Good advice.
And he would mention that to me different times. What a fool I was, he said, to sell John McCauley that lot back there for $400. And he regretted it. Bothered him. I said, Grandpa, you did what you had to do. You had to survive.
Yeah.
Because his mother sent him over to old Bobby McLeod. He was a rich man over on that McLeod Road to buy, see if he'd borrow enough money to buy a horse. He wanted to get an old horse. And I don't know whether the old horse died or not, because he had an old horse. Grandpa talked about that he used to have to take his mother down to Appahock Church, Anglican Church, on Christmas morning.
Yeah.
This old screw of a horse, he didn't think much of it, but he did it. So he was over to Bobby to borrow some money. Bobby said, I could let you have the money, but I wouldn't take a chance on you. So he thanked him and come home. And he got an old horse somewhere. And then he got trading horses. He traded for this nice looking horse, but she was a kicker. She'd catch the rein under her tail, and when she caught that buzz, after he traded with somebody in Appahock, he told me who it was, but I'd forgotten that part. And when he swung to go home, she kicked, cleaned the front board out of the old sled and right up by his face and made him kill him. But that's what he said. He was always half annoyed at that fella. He didn't mind him beating him on a trade, but if he'd have said, look out for her, she'd kick.
Yeah.
And that's the only time she would kick, when she would catch that rein under her tail. So he was telling somebody about it, and he said, you take that horse to the blacksmith shop tomorrow morning and cut her tail off as close to her ass as you can get it, and sear it good.
Yeah.
And he did. And he said he had a dandy horse, because he couldn't
never
catch that tail and she could go. And he passed old Bobby McLeod going to Sussex one day in the sleigh. And he just waved at him and went on. Made him feel good. Yeah.
That's a good story. I like that one.
Yeah. You know, he'd tell that. Yeah.
Where did you meet your wife? She was from
She
down
came to
Bloomfield.
me. She was hard up for a man. And she liked the look of me. And
They've got that on tape, George, you better tell the truth.
she liked the look of me, and she just said, I gotta have that fellow.
There. So you didn't have to work at all for it.
No, just talk a little. And,
Just to say, he got his wife the same as his father did. She came here to teach school. Well, Mrs. Sharp came to teach in Norton. And his father met her there, but I came to teach in Millstream.
Now
yeah, that's how it happens.
the school teacher moves in, and so when did you notice the school teacher?
Oh, right quick, I guess.
I think it was October before he noticed her.
Yeah.
So
You can always tell a good deal when you see
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
now how did you make her notice you? What did you do?
Oh, that was no problem. I had my pick.
Yeah. Okay. So the first date or the first time that you sort of presented yourself, when was that, and what would that be at a?
Well, I picked her up when I went to pick my mother up at an institute meeting.
Okay.
So then she went.
She wouldn't get out of the car, I suppose you want to say.
She got interested in institute. She's been a member for all her life here. Yeah. Oh, you know how those things happen.
Boys and girls go get together, I think is the
Yeah.
expression, yeah.
So how long after the first you met was it till you were married?
Oh, 3 years, was it?
Yeah.
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 And where were you married at?
In Bloomfield.
In Bloomfield.
Yeah. Baptist church there.
Oh,
A
okay.
hot day,
In what time of year? Summer?
July,
July?
and my brother stood up with me. We had to wait a little while there. we were standing on the furnace register, and he thought there must have been a fire on down there. It was hot day.
So, and you've been married how long now?
62?
61. I'll be 61 this summer.
61.
61.
Yeah.
And how many children?
4.
4 children.
Yeah.
How many
Would have
grand?
had more, only I don't know what happened. We thought we were getting modern, and
4 was enough. Yeah.
4 was enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many grandchildren would there be?
There's 12, isn't there, Mom?
10.
10? Yeah.
10 grandchildren.
Okay.
Everybody has 2. The girls each have 2, and me has 4.
Yeah.
8 girls and 2 boys.
Yeah. Had a good life. I've been here all my life. I'm like my grandfather.
Yeah.
His nephew came to visit him on his 80th birthday. And a dozen times that first day or two he was here, he said, "Uncle, you've been here 80 years in one place." And I've been, I
86.
beat that. I've been 86 years
86 years.
in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed being here, I can tell that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've had it, but I'd like to be able to work a little now, but I guess.
Well, George, farming has changed a lot. You just
Yeah.
want to comment on, when you started your horses, and
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on farming over all these years?
Well, farming's good yet. I'd recommend it to any fella, but it's a job that you got to work at, and farmers tend to tell them they don't want their kids to go through what they went through. So then that discourages them. They won't go at it like the old fella did.
Well, you couldn't have discouraged your son too much, because he's taken over.
Yeah, well, he's good.
Yeah.
He's good. He got a little bit of me in him, I think. I hope. Yeah. But I hate to see the farms. I point out through Pearsonville, there was 4 of those Creelock men came from Goshen and bought 4 farms there. And all did well, and their boys did, and they cleaned up the farms and did good. But we go over there to church once a month or more, because the way things have unfolded, we're getting ministers and things. But I tell people that Pearsonville is going to look like Goshen does to me in a few years.
I guess.
I didn't hear you tell me anything about the hens. Or was there never any question that led to that?
We didn't. We talked about the dairy farm. Maybe you'd want to comment on the hens. 'Cause
Well, we got into that.
I mean, that your father had the second business,
Yeah.
which was the foxes, and we
And,
had the second business, which was the laying hens.
And I tell people that it's
Hatching
great.
eggs.
It's great for a farmer to have two things going. Well, up head of Millstream or Carsonville there, built a barn this summer. Young Falcons and hay. And he's raising turkeys and built a big barn this summer. Going good. And we get into hens through because we were having hard scrabble here, and Mom wanted to go teaching, and I didn't want that, being away all the time. So we tried this. Went to a meeting in Sussex of Canada Packers, and when the big broiler rush was on around here, and everybody was building broiler barns. So I said to the fellow tonight, I don't want to build a big barn for broilers, but I would like to try some of the hatching egg business. So we started with 100.
when would that be roughly?
What year would it be, Mom? 1930 or 40?
Hey?
What year did we start the hens?
We were talking about that today. We thought that you were reading in your diary at 72 last night.
72.
And we thought that you were building the first hen barn then.
Yeah.
We had a flock of 300 the year before.
Yeah.
And then we built a building for 2,000. And then 5 years later we built another one for 2,000 more.
Okay, so you had about 4,000.
We had 4,000.
We had 4,000.
Yeah.
And it was good business. Canada Packers used us good.
Yeah.
And made it good for us. We used to get, if you did well, you had a good hatch and good,
Because you weren't paid by the egg, you were paid by the chick that hatched.
yeah.
Okay. And you were raising these were the parents of the
Yeah.
royals
Yeah,
that you
and
would.
we were
And,
supplying hatching eggs.
yeah.
And it was good.
They supplied the birds and the feed and the medication, and we just supplied the building and the power and the work.
And the use is good. I remember we got a bonus check if you had exceeded the limit. And they got a check of 2,500 one time.
Just for the bonus, you've been paid all
Yeah,
along.
bonus. Boys, that turned me on.
Yeah.
My boy bought a GIC, got 19% interest on it the first year. I said, boys, the smell of money.
this is prosperity.
Yeah, this has come.
Yeah.
That turned me on. But I never made any much after that. But
You mean the interest didn't, it
Yeah.
wasn't the same?
no, but it was good.
Well, 19%. That was a
That was a biggie one.
historical fact right there.
Yeah.
Now you can get 1% on
No.
your savings if you're careful.
But we used to get a flock in twice a year, get one in the spring and one in the fall. And we started them a day old. We had
Okay.
a little building for
But
starting.
Mom worked hard at that. She did this. I'd be away baling hay and
Or milking cows.
milking cows or something, and she'd close up at night and
Open up in the morning.
open up in the morning and take,
But it was
look
all,
after the feed and how much they got.
it was all automated at the end. We had automatic feed and water and air moving and all at first at the end, so it was less work.
But after a while, our old stuff got worn.
And our homegrown crew all grew up and went away.
Yeah,
'Cause
they
the
used
girls
to
all
work.
worked.
They used to pick eggs and
And so
clean
what-
up, and they got a cent a minute,
Okay.
60 cents an hour. And they thought that was good. That
And
was
it
all.
was, they all saved money. They all
That
worked
was all
hard.
we could afford to pay them, or give them out of it. And
But they were buying their own clothes and everything
Yeah.
by the time they got in high school.
Well,
yeah, it taught them.
taught them a good lesson.
Yeah.
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 And they're all just as careful with their money as their father.
That's nothing wrong with that.
No.
What accomplishments or accomplishment, if you want to have one, would you be the most proud of? Something you've done in your life?
Well, having a good family. I always ask people about their kids. You know, it must be a kick in guts to raise boys that are no good, right? People must. But I never had that. Never had to do that. They all. Our family number cost us a lot.
Oh, they all went to
Went
college?
college.
Yeah.
Or worked their
One
way
of them
through.
would write essays for other kids that were too damn lazy to do it,
Type
and,
them up.
and charge them for it. Yeah.
So your teaching came through there.
Yeah. Yes, it did.
Sylvia she worked at the urban restaurant out here for 4 or 5 years, in high school and then and through college. And she'd come home from Fredericton on the bus from up to St. John and get off there, and I'd meet her out there with her uniform. This would be Saturday, and this would be Saturday. She'd work till Saturday night, and then she'd go back the next morning at 6 and work another shift, and then head back to Fredericton with her boyfriend in the afternoon. And
Yeah.
get, make $100 or so in tips and wages.
Sure.
Yeah.
They all worked their way through college.
Yes, our college for them didn't cost a lot. So
Mhm.
we didn't have it.
And you could borrow from the government easier then than you can now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One time we did try to borrow and they said I was making too much money.
That's right.
I couldn't.
Well, by the time Sylvie went, she was the poor. We didn't have any more dependents.
Yeah.
And she couldn't borrow, only just a little.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she worked her way through.
Yeah.
I got one last question here, George, and it's kind of puts you on the spot, but what is the one thing you want people to remember about you? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I told people that when I died, they'd like to have to hire pallbearers. I would like them to think, well, George Sharp wasn't too bad after all.
Okay.
He was a good neighbor and helped out.
Huge part.
Well, I must say I've always enjoyed talking to you, and the advice you gave me was always good. I guess maybe we'll just close with that, but I want to thank you, George, for taking time
Well,
to do this video for the Historical Society.
Appahock Recreation Council is writing a book, and some of them were doing that. Come up here interviewing me one day, wanted to know, if I knew any stories about Appahock. But I said the stories I knew about Appahock, I wouldn't allow them to print. But it's great to have lots of friends. Valuable. Yeah.
And memories are great too.
Yeah. 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 And
George had too much responsibility as a kid. He used to take a horse, when he was only 10 or 11, take a horse to Berwick with some grain to be ground, grist to the mill up there. And because he said he'd meet, who was it used to make the fellow with the road?
Press, the old road scraper, yeah.
When he just went by the horse, he'd roar and scare the horse half to death.
Put me over the ditch a lot of times.
Oh. I suppose you
But anyway, he enjoyed it.
you
We had a little fun. Yeah.
relieve the monotony of the road grader.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we, let's before we get how many minutes? Do you have any idea?
The second half seemed to be a lot longer than the first half, didn't it?
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should have had you. We should do another one with get you to come right up and.
Well, he's told me a lot of stuff, but it doesn't always come to his mind right away.
Well,
See, I just got done writing my memoirs, and so I've got all this stuff fresh in my mind.
well, I was just going to think we could go right back to Bloomfield and start with your early memories. I'm sure you've got I've got lots of them. Well, maybe we'll see how this one comes out. Maybe we'll come back and do you, Francis.
Well, you remember that little thing that I wrote about the house that was in the Historical Society newsletter?
I do. Yeah.
That was that was the fact about the house right there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll, like I say, we'll see how this goes.
But I was said that when I read that at one of the Historical Society meetings, they got me to read that article.
Yes.